In this episode of American Greed, Brent and Tyler Cassidy, two brothers from St. Louis, are bringing a splash of showbiz to the death biz, turning cemeteries into festival sites, and turning themselves into celebrities. But few know that their secret backer is their father, Doug, who is stealing millions of dollars with a little sleight of hand and age-old sales tactics.
Yeah, I think Hooters had similar hiring requirements.
His scheme cost victims an astounding $450 million. Money Doug generously shares with his wife and sons. In the spring of 2008 in Blue Springs, Missouri, hundreds of people believe they have taken care of their last expense. They have chosen their casket, flowers, and music, and paid in advance for their funeral, putting their money into the hands of their local funeral home owner, Marty Myers.
Yeah, that looks good, Liz. Very good. The people signed the contract thinking that their money was going in trust. They were entrusting Marty Myers.
But Myers puts his trust in a man named Doug Cassidy, who runs a multi-million-dollar funeral business and who promises to keep the money safe. And then Myers receives the worst possible news. The money is gone. More than $450 million of prepaid funeral money is missing.
I trusted them, and they ran off with the money.
Marty Myers is on the hook for nearly $4 million of that missing money. And now he is terrified.
Everything that I owned, everything I did, they were on the line. My family was going to lose everything.
And the question is, what did Doug Cassidy do with all that money? To find out, American Greed heads to Buffalo, Missouri, a small town that by all appearances is still rooted in a bygone era. It is where Doug Cassidy grows up on a small farm. By the time he's in high school, life looks promising for Cassidy. He's a star athlete and has a pretty girlfriend named Rhonda. Later, Doug and Rhonda marry, and they get out of Buffalo as fast as they can. After Cassidy gets a law degree, they move to Springfield, Missouri, where, as an up-and-coming young lawyer, he can afford a big house. He starts an investment club. And that's when people get to know the real Doug Cassidy.
He was the kind of guy that really wanted everything, and he wanted it now.
His investors claim he lies and steals their money. And eventually, Cassidy is indicted on charges of conspiracy and tax fraud. He pleads guilty.
He was always a con man. He was always looking for a fraud.
After serving 6 months at Marion, Illinois Federal Penitentiary, Cassidy is a disbarred lawyer looking for a new future. He sets his eyes on what is called the death care industry and takes over a business that sells prepaid funeral contracts. Pay now, die later, and the cost of the funeral is covered. The company is called National Prearranged Services, known as NPS. And in that move, Cassidy steps into a highly lucrative, growing business.
Somewhere between 25 and 28% of all funerals conducted in the course of a year are prearranged and pre-funded funerals.
Cassidy sets up his headquarters outside St. Louis in the suburban city of Clayton and hires door-to-door salesmen to sell what are called pre-need contracts. The salesmen tell customers that prearranging a funeral is a selfless act of love, a way to avoid confusion and chaos at the time of a death.
What is being exploited is grandma's fear of death, grandma's fear of what her death will do to the family. It's very, very easy to sell us a bill of goods that says, you won't have to think about it and everything will be just fine. Here, sign this.
And Cassidy's door-to-door salesmen clean up selling the pre-needs.
We saw NPS almost like gypsies. They would go into a town, they would start writing pre-needs with consumers, and they would go to the funeral home and say, I have 50 pre-need contracts I just wrote.
The funeral home is grateful to have a lock on the future business. And Cassidy makes a promise to take care of the money.
In the early 1990s, I would get phone calls from clients that we were serving in Missouri, and they would tell me that they're doing business with this new company called NPS. And I'd ask a simple question, how is the money invested? And I would get the telephone equivalent of a shrugged shoulder. So I called up NPS and I said I had some questions about the company and how they were investing the money. And I got a very simple answer from the voice on the phone. It's none of your damn business.
But it is the state of Missouri's business. And in 1992, the Attorney General charges that national prearranged services accounts are short millions of dollars. And suddenly, local reporters like Mike Owens want to talk to Doug Cassidy.
We had been trying to interview him for about 3 weeks. You finally say, well, I'm gonna ambush the guy. I'm gonna sneak up on the guy, we're gonna do the interview and be done with it.
Now retired, Owens watches his 1993 story and is amused by his encounter with Doug Cassidy.
We got a picture of him on a cell phone. And you know, cell phones were not that common back in 1993. They were expensive.
Surprisingly, Cassidy stops and tells Owens the state is wrong about the NPS accounts.
They are not underfunded. I do know, as a matter of fact, that they are overfunded, not underfunded.
Cassidy also tells Owens that he is not in charge of NPS. He says he is a consultant. When Owens asks why NPS owns Cassidy's house, Cassidy has an unexpected answer.
We rent that house.
From NPS.
And how much is the rent?
You'd have to ask my accountant. I'm not sure. I'm not in.
Before the interview ends, Owens brings up one last topic, Cassidy's 1982 felony conviction.
That happened over 11 years ago, and Mike, I'm not seeking publicity. I'm a private person, and I really disgusts me that, you know, you would use something that happened 11 years ago to try to hurt me personally. I have lived a very upright life for the last 11 years, and I'm proud of that.
But that conviction hangs over Cassidy because it prevents him from working in the insurance business. And that means he cannot publicly run NPS. It means that he needs to call the shots from the background. And he puts his 23-year-old son, Brent, out in front.
This whole situation, we're right, they're wrong, we represent the consumer.
Brent takes on a prominent role at an incredibly young age, almost fresh out of college, and ends up, in later stages, becomes the public face of NPS.
Doug is not even an owner of NPS. The business is owned by a trust that benefits his wife, Rhonda, and his two sons, Brent and Tyler. But everyone at NPS knows who's in charge.
It's all Doug all the time. He's directing the whole show, as he has all along. You know, he can say that he's got a president and a vice president and this kid's running this. He was the mastermind.
Eventually, Cassidy answers the state of Missouri's complaint by agreeing to keep customers' funeral money safe in a bank trust account. But as anyone who saw his interview knows, Doug Cassidy can be slippery with the truth.
We rent that house.
Stacy Keach here, feeling greedy for more videos like this one? Then be sure to like and subscribe right here on CNBC Prime.